Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. This is our flagship forum of the HACR Symposium, the 11th annual CEO Roundtable, featuring the CEOs of Ford Motor Company, led by Mark Fields, President and CEO, Masco Corp, led by Keith Allman, President and CEO, and Ralph Babb Jr., Chairman and CEO of Comerica. So give our CEOs a big applause. I want to thank Ford Motor Company for serving as this year's host of the CEO Roundtable. And to come up to the stage to say a few words is someone we all know. He has been a major advocate in our community on behalf of the Ford Motor Company Fund. He's someone who is a former young Hispanic corporate achiever, so YHCAers, just know that if you keep going, one day you could be a Joe Avila. And on top of what Joe Avila does is that he's the manager of Ford Motor Company's fund, where he leads Hispanic strategic engagement, as well as Ford Motor Company's initiatives in the community. You saw at lunch about the Ford Driving Dreams program, some of the many examples of the great work that Joe Avila does on behalf of Ford Motor Company Fund. But on top of that, Joe is someone who is a true example of a YHCA, or someone who has succeeded in corporate America, but also is involved in so many organizations. He's on the board of directors of the Smithsonian Latino Center, the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, CH Chile, Ser Jasa Progress, and he's also on the corporate advisory boards for CHCI, National Council of Raza, and he serves as the chair of the Cuban American National Council's Corporate Business Advisors, and was recently elected to the LULAC Corporate Alliance. So as you can see, Joe Avila is someone who truly cares about our community. Please welcome the manager for community affairs, Joe Avila from Ford Motor Company Fund.
Thank you. Gracias, Sid. Thank you for your generosity. I don't know if being Joe Avila after a few years in corporate America is a good or bad thing. I will let you to decide that, but I'm very proud to be here today, especially representing Ford Motor Company. It's truly an honor to be not only here welcoming you during the weekend in Detroit, but also to be here speaking on behalf of a Fortune 10 company, and that is actually the host of the CEO Roundtable. And to be honest with you, I still remember I was a little kid that was born and raised in Venezuela. And to be here in front of you is truly an honor and a pleasure, so thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and for what you do, Sid and HACR, the president and CEO, Sid Wilson, our good friend, Ignacio Salazar, chair of HACR, the entire board of directors, but most importantly, because I know they are the ones who do the job here, the staff of HACR. Please give a round of applause to that amazing staff that year over year have the patience of dealing with all of us. So, you know, as you have heard, when Henry Ford started our company, not too far from here actually, over a century ago, he was not only pursuing profits, right? He had a greater purpose. He wanted to make people's lives better. He wanted to provide to everyone the freedom of mobility. But Ford also has been able to make people's lives better, not only by building and developing the amazing and the best cars and trucks with the latest technology, with the most efficient fuel economy vehicles you can, and developing the next generation, but also supporting the next generation of leaders and achieving Hispanic inclusion inside of corporate America and outside. And to me as a Latino, I'm very proud of living that Ford legacy. As Sid was mentioning, several years ago, I was part of the Young Hispanic Corporate Achiever Program. This weekend, I spent the weekend here in Detroit being part of the Corporate Executive Forum. And I can, tell you a lot in a one-on-one about how HACR is helping to develop Latinos in corporate America. So thank you very much. And this is a partnership that dates back to more than 25 years. You are not gonna stop hearing from us how proud we are of this partnership. As you know, we have, over that period, we have invested more than $20 million in HACR and its member organizations to continue developing the next generation of corporate leaders. For we know that building stronger communities not only goes in our communities, but in our own inside community, developing our talent, our diverse talent. And I invite you to turn your attention to the screen and learn more about our efforts to achieve success at HACR in this increasingly multicultural world. But please, if you can run the video.
Imagine a place where there's only a single viewpoint. It could feel isolated with limited potential. If that viewpoint joins others exactly alike, it could generate a lot of the same thoughts and ideas. But when you bring together different viewpoints and perspectives, you get energized with new ideas where there's no limit to what's possible. That's what we seek out at Ford. As diverse as our products and customers, so is our company. At Ford, we not only celebrate diversity, we embrace it because it makes us a better, a stronger, and a more robust company. It helps us innovate, collaborate, and inspires us to produce superior products, to cultivate new ideas and spark new thinking for transportation in a changing world, and fuels us as we transform to an automotive and mobility company. Diversity and inclusion permeate the very core of our company. It starts at the top of our house and extends across our entire enterprise, from the first sketch to the last inspection of new vehicles and every step between. You find it in our global workforce that reflects every community around the world where we live and where we work. But it's not just in the people we hire, because achieving meaningful diversity is truly a collaborative effort. It spreads to our strategic partners, to our dealers, our suppliers, and out to the communities they serve. Diversity and inclusion isn't just the right thing to do. It's the way to do things right. That's why we encourage and revel in what makes each of us unique and empowers us to work together to make lives and the world a better place. Sharing where we find inspiration and embracing all our differences makes us an unstoppable force. It's what makes us one Ford.
What do you think? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to strategic partners like HACR and each one of the member organizations. We are honored to be hosts of the HACR CEO Roundtable. And on behalf of Ford, muchas gracias y disfruten el CEO Roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you. Another applause for Joe Avila, Manager of Community Affairs for Ford Motor Company Fund and a YHCA alumnus. Thank you for your leadership. Okay, so before we bring the CEOs out, just some ground rules. The questions that we're going to be taking, our Q&A, can only be done on the HACR app. Just to give you some directions, if you go to the HACR app, there is a section that is that's called Topic Channel. And on the Topic Channel is where it says Ask CEO. You can only submit questions there, and then at around 5:20 or so, then we'll be collecting the questions and then asking them to the CEOs. So we will. So just so that just so again, on the HACR app, under the Topic channel area, there's an area called Ask CEO. You can type in your questions, and then our team will be filtering to look for the key questions to send to the CEOs. All right, great. So with that, are you ready? Ready for our CEOs? Real excited again for having Mark Fields, President and CEO of Ford Motor Company, Keith Allman, President and CEO of Masco Corp, and Ralph Babb Jr., Chairman and CEO of Comerica. And to moderate our CEO Roundtable is someone who has moderated our CEO Roundtable, I believe, the last 8 times. So she is very seasoned in moderating our CEO Roundtable. She is the news anchor for Telemundo 39 in Dallas-Fort Worth. And also she has a show called Enfoque 39 that is a political show that is shown in Dallas. But she is someone who has been an example of excellence. Last year, she received her 26th Emmy Award. 26 Emmy Awards for her work as a news anchor, reporter, and producer and writer. And in 2014, she was recognized as the best local news anchor in the country by the Alliance for Women in the Media Foundation. And she also received the prestigious García Award in New York City. Ladies and gentlemen, from Telemundo 39, our moderator this evening, Norma García.
Sí, thank you so much for that kind introduction, and thank you, HACR. Let me see. Okay. Thank you, HACR, for inviting me back. On a very personal note, I'd like to thank you because a couple of years ago, this event, HACR, inspired me to pursue, to pursue a master's degree. A couple of years ago, I told you I was looking for universities. I decided to go to Michigan State, and I am so happy to share with you that on Friday I'll be graduating with a master's in management. So that is thanks to you, thanks to your example. And I just wanted to share that with you so you know the impact that the symposium has had on people like me. So thank you so much for your inspiration, and let's get to it. Okay, so I guess I'm not using that mic. I'll use this one. And I will do the introduction from here. How's that? First of all, Mark Fields, thank you so much for being our host today. Let me tell you a little bit about Mark. Mark Fields is President and Chief Executive Officer of Ford Motor Company as of July 1st, 2014. Having a celebration coming up soon, I believe. He's also a member of the company's board of directors. Under Fields' leadership, Ford is expanding its business model to be both an auto and mobility company. The company is committed to growing and investing in its core business of designing, manufacturing, marketing, financing, and servicing a full line of Ford cars, trucks, SUVs, and electrified vehicles, as well as Lincoln luxury vehicles. At the same time, Ford is aggressively pursuing emerging opportunities through Ford Smart Mobility. The company's plan to be a leader in connectivity, mobility, autonomous vehicles, and customer experience and data analytics. We'll talk about that. Fields joined Ford Motor Company in July of 1989. He was elected to the IBM Board of Directors in January 2016. He also currently serves as chair of the U.S.-China Business Council. He holds an economics degree from Rutgers University and an MBA from Harvard Graduate School of Business. Let's give our host a big round of applause. Let me also introduce, far left, a fellow Texan, Mr. Ralph Babb Jr. He is the chairman and chief executive officer with Comerica Incorporated and Comerica Bank. He also serves as the director of both organizations. Mr. Babb joined Comerica in 1995 as Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. He was named Vice Chairman in 1999, appointed President and CEO in January 2002, completed his service as Chief Financial Officer in April of that year, and added the title of Chairman in October of 2002. Before joining Comerica, he served as Vice Chairman for Mercantile Bank Corporation. He's a member of the Federal Reserve Board Federal Advisory Council, also serves as a member of the Texas Instruments Board of Directors, board member of the Clearing House and the Southwestern Medical Foundation. In addition, he's also an advisory board member for Southern Methodist University Ethics and Public Responsibility Center. Holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from University of Missouri. Let's welcome Mr. Ralph Babb. And last but not least, we have Keith Allman. He's the President and Chief Executive Officer with Masco. He was elected President and CEO on February 14, 2014. Prior to his election, he was group president, a position he was promoted to in 2011, and had a responsibility for Masco's plumbing products in North American cabinet business. Allman was responsible for a number of companies, accounting for approximately half of Masco's revenues in 2012. In his role, he led the development and implementation of a platform-wide strategy, including the turnaround of the North American cabinet business. Prior to Masco, Allman spent 13 years with General Motors in a variety of manufacturing, engineering, and quality positions. Following his career at GM, he worked in the automotive Tier 1 supply base in a number of senior leadership positions. He has a mechanical engineering degree from General Motors Institute, now Kettering University, and an MBA from the University of Michigan. He is a member of the HACR SE Supervisory Board, Oshkosh Corporation Board of Directors, and is on the board of the National Association of Manufacturers. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's give our panel a big, big, warm welcome. So, because this is a panel on diversity and inclusion, I'll start by asking our host, what does diversity and inclusion mean to you? What is your definition?
Well, let me start out. Can you hear me? No? I'll speak really loud. Let's see. What diversity means to me. You know, diversity, first off, it's interesting. Diversity. Yeah, it's on. Yeah, it's on. Okay, I'll speak really loud. So, diversity from my standpoint, it used to be all about, no, don't worry about it. Okay. This is going to be okay if we don't fix it now.
Technical difficulties. You know, in news, when we have this, we usually just cut to break, but there's no break here.
I sound like that phone commercial. Okay, so diversity from my standpoint, diversity always used to be defined as gender and ethnicity. But for myself and for us at Ford, diversity is really about individual differences. And, you know, differences around your cultures, differences around experiences, differences around skills, opinions, and thoughts. And so that's how we think about diversity at Ford, because what we find is when you have those individual differences and you get everybody's opinion as you work on things, you end up with much better results and a much better team. So that's how we define diversity.
Keith, we were talking about the name of your company, and it has diversity and inclusion on its DNA. Can you talk about what Masco means, how it got the name, and what diversity and inclusion means to you?
Yeah, and first of all, thank you for inviting me to be here. It's a very proud moment for myself and for my company, Masco. Masco was formed in 1929 by an Armenian immigrant who came to the United States with literally the proverbial $50, which I forwarded up at a discount rate. Conservatively, it was about $425 when he landed in New York, so barely gets him a hotel room. He, in 1929, came in 1919, and in 1929, with 3 of his buddies, they bought broken down machinery and repaired them and started making car parts for this guy's company. And his buddies, he was Manugian, that was his name. His other buddy was Agemian, and his third buddy was Sohigian. So M-A-S company, and that was Masco Corporation in 1929. The Great Depression came, and his 2 buddies had families. He was by himself, so he was able to hold it together. And fast forward to a few years ago when the business was doing $12 billion a year in revenue from that humble start. So absolutely, diversity is at the core of who we are and what we try to do. In terms of what diversity means to me, I think, in a word, it's empathy. It's understanding your perspective and being proud of it, but also understanding, appreciating, and thinking about the perspective of others. And when we can do that, I believe, that empathy creates energy. And it enables us, it's kind of the seed kernel of starting to think about trust. And at that trust, it's courageous dialogue, and that all builds up to high-performing teams, which at Masco we desperately want to arrive to. So it's important from a business perspective, but I think from a personal perspective, it's more about empathy.
Ralph?
Yes, I would agree with Mark on the definition of the way we look at diversity. From that standpoint, it's the similarities as well as the differences that are so important. And our customer base in many communities is highly diverse, and that's important that we have the team that is highly diverse so that we can set the strategies and the things that we need to provide for the people in the communities as part of our business to grow in the banking industry.
You have been CEO, Ralph, for, is it 15 years? Has the definition of diversity and the importance of it changed from 2002, fast forward to 2017?
I would say it has always been one of our core values. And our team very much focuses on scorecards and making sure that we're meeting the goals that we want from a diversity standpoint for the reasons that I just mentioned. And our Chief Diversity Officer is also head of our talent acquisition as well. Nathan is right there in the audience, and that's very important to combine those, as well as to decide of how that diversity can be capitalized on. And we have what we call segmentation teams that are focused on their particular part, and it's very focused on setting the goals that we need to meet in order to fulfill the services that we want to provide.
You really have some amazing numbers. You were telling me that 60% of your employees are female, 50% are female officers, 50% of the overall number of employees, 30% are minority officers. I'm guessing it wasn't always like that. How did you get to those numbers? What are the programs that you put in place? And what do you see yourself as a company doing in the future to even increase those numbers?
I didn't go way back and look at the numbers, but I would say that probably the diversity that we have has been here for a long time because, as I mentioned, it's part of our culture and the knowledge of knowing that we want to make sure that we are doing the right things for the customer base. And today that is people put their arms around that and always have since I've been at the company. And that is one of the things that I'm most proud of our people is the focus on the diversity and using it for the ways that I spoke about, as well as we do resource groups and encourage professional discussions as well as volunteering in the community through those groups. And that's giving back to the community, which is very important, we believe, as part of our culture in being a community bank.
Keith, you were telling me that your company recently tied compensation to diversity recruitment efforts. Can you talk about that?
We have a renewed, if you will, emphasis on an overarching talent strategy. So it's really about tying compensation to that talent strategy than it is per se diversity and inclusion, which is an important component of it for sure. One of the challenges that we face as an organization is trying to help our executives and our leaders understand that their job is to hit the numbers and to do it the right way, consistent with our values, of course. But it's also their job to be a net talent exporter, to develop talent. So that's really at the heart of our emphasis in terms of putting some compensation to the talent strategy. And it's gotten attention, to say the least, which is great for us to be able to start to have this dialogue. Now, with regards to specifically diversity and inclusion, we're just getting started, quite frankly. And I think we collectively think that it would be a mistake at this stage in our evolution to really start to force the numbers. What we're trying to force is an understanding, back to that empathy, to put together plans. How are you going to understand this issue more effectively? How are you going to start to work it? So on the D&I, it's more about conformance to our plans. Are we executing? Are we thinking about it? Are we talking about it? And this is part of my plan. I have a plan that I asked for, but to spend 50 days on this issue. And this is part of that, to start to build that empathy, to understand the perspectives of others more, and to get out there and mix it up. So it's not just the organization that has it. Yours truly does as well.
Masco is just starting. Ford, on the other hand, has a long-standing tradition, over a century, of diversity and inclusion. How do you make sure, Mark, as a CEO, that those values are embraced by the rest of your company? Such a large company, is that a challenge?
Well, it's not as much as a challenge as you'd expect, and the reason for it, as you mentioned, we've been around for 114 years, and we're a global company. We have employees in many parts of the world, and it's interesting. I think the best way of reinforcing the culture as the leader is to lead by example. And so when you look at our senior team, our top 20 leaders, we're a pretty diverse group. And I think it comes from the fact that we take the approach, our leadership team, our employees should be a reflection of our customer base. Because when you have that, you have a deep understanding of your customers in a really visceral way, as opposed to a way that's shown on a piece of paper in a marketing research report or things of that nature. Plus, what we do as a leadership team, many of our senior leaders in that top group have spent a number of years in different countries and different cultures. I myself spent 10 years overseas, and it really changes you as a person. When I left the US a number of years ago, I was a different person than I am today because I had to go into a different culture where I didn't speak the language initially, and I didn't understand the culture. And I had to really put myself in other people's shoes. And many of our executives, senior executives, have lived that. And when you live that and you viscerally feel it, and I remember, one of the experiences I lived in Hiroshima, Japan, and I remember being denied going into a bar because I was a gaijin. I was a foreigner. And that was the first time I experienced discrimination. And that really impacted me as a person. And so our senior team has all these rich experiences. We marry it to a business strategy that says we want to make sure that our employee and leadership is representative of our customers. And if we do that and truly understand that and leverage that, we can be very successful as a business and, very importantly, in the community where we give back.
You've lived in 4 different countries, correct? Did you know that Mark habla español? He lived in Argentina. Tiene un acento todavía argentino, ¿verdad? What was that experience like?
It was fantástico. Increíble. El chorizo es fantástico. Pero el vino.
He was telling us that he gained 20 pounds when he moved to Argentina, and then he lost them when he went to Japan.
Yeah, I gained 20 pounds. Yeah, exactly. What did I learn by going there? It was what I was mentioning earlier, the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and walk a mile in their shoes. And it teaches you. I remember one instance where I asked, when I first got to Japan, and I asked our marketing manager for Japan, I said, can you please give me a market overview of the Japanese market? He said, no problem, Field Son, I'll get back to you. 2 weeks go by. I didn't get anything. So I said, Wakabayashi-san, where's that report? He goes, don't worry, Field Son, you'll have it tomorrow. The next day, I get a binder 3 inches thick on the market in Japan. And my lesson there was, as I communicate and speak, what I should have said is can you give me a brief 2-page overview of the Japanese market and consumer so I can understand? And the lesson that I learned is how you communicate, how you listen, how you empathize is critically important to leadership and being a real person.
Keith, you were telling me that in one of your first jobs, you were the minority, the only white guy in the team. What did that teach you? What are the lessons that you still have with you from that experience?
It taught me what it really feels like to be afraid. I was right out of high school. Went to a college called General Motors Institute at the time, which you could you went to school for 3 months and then worked in a factory for 3 months. And all the good tech center jobs, the design jobs were all taken, and the only one left was in a foundry in Saginaw, Michigan, which is an industrial town here in Michigan. And it was a rough, tough area. And my first assignment was in the heat treat department. And I was about 125 pounds at the time, and was definitely the only white guy. And it was different. I will tell you that by the end of my rotation, I ended up having lunch with the Mexican fellas on the line, and it was only because they enjoyed having me try the jalapenos. But you have to try to do what you can to fit in, but that hurt.
Ralph, have you ever been in a situation where you are the minority and you have to all of a sudden shift your views?
I have been in a number of situations in working in different jobs and things, but I have not been in a minority situation from that standpoint. But I was treated somewhat as a new person, and the difference that you receive in doing that particular job taught me a lot. And also my vision of watching people and how they react to things and how they do things and how they execute things has been one of the strengths over the years in a number of different situations that taught me the value of people. And never take for the initial thought that the background or the abilities of a particular individual, because I've seen situations where those kind of judgments were totally wrong. And you find out very quickly, and that's something I learned to respect all and for what each of the individuals are and what they do.
So it sounds to me that you have a very clear appreciation for diversity and inclusion. Your commitment is evident because you are here, but what's missing in corporate America, and what can you do? What does the community need to do? Whose responsibility is it to have more Hispanic, more Latino representation at the corporate level of companies like yours, Mark?
Well, I think the responsibility first and foremost falls with the leaders, and in our case, it falls with myself as well as the rest of the leadership group in making sure that we're driving this. I also think at the same time as we think about this that it's important that we're planting the seeds for diversity to grow up in organizations. And I think too many times, sometimes organizations, they just look at the top leadership, or they look at the next level down and they say, okay, are you diverse? But for us as leaders in large organizations, we really have to spend a lot of time from the bottom of the organization to make sure that we're bringing in the right diverse group, and then that diverse group is feeding its way up the ladder, so to speak. And as a team, we spend a lot of time on that. And we look at the numbers. We don't have mandated numbers, but we look at the numbers because unless you have a clear understanding of that, you can have all the great objectives or lofty goals in the world, but if you don't have that pipeline, you'll never get there, and you'll just play lip service to it. So that's the way we approach it at Ford, and we'll continue to approach it going forward.
Keith?
I think Mark hit on it square on, is that what we call the top of the pipeline, or that funnel fill, to get that good raw material in of talent that you can work with. Without that, you're sunk. The pyramid's going to be inverted. It's not going to stand up. I think to add on to Mark's comments and beyond that, with regards to mentorship and being there as an example, as part of this conference, I reached out to some of our senior Hispanic executives in the company, and I talked to them. It was an amazing process, and one of our leaders runs a huge business for us. He said, you know, the problem is, the question was, what can we do about Hispanic development? And he said, the problem is that Hispanics are all different. You know, a third-generation immigrant of a doctor in Cuba and Miami is different than a second-generation Texan or Mexican in Texas, and certainly different than an immigrant from Salvador in South Central. But our development programs don't comprehend that difference. You know, for me, this is Ricardo talking. He says, for me, my family, my community thought I was a success. He's from South Central LA because he graduated from high school and didn't get rung up in violence. So I had not that they weren't motivated, but he had no role model. His role model was a professional athlete. Now compare and contrast that to me. I wanted to be running Chevrolet Motor Division since I can remember. And I could look to the people who had that kind of jobs, and I could see what jobs they had by when and how they got there. And I could call them, and they'd talk to me. And they were white, and they looked like me. That was my role model. They were there. For Ricardo, not so much. So I think, to Mark's point on the top of the funnel and feeding, but also we need mentors. We need mentors that understand and can relate and can talk to someone from, say, the Hispanic community and say, you know, you have to move if you want to be an executive, you know, which is, from Ricardo's perspective, he would never imagine having to move away from Sunday dinner with his mom and his aunts and his other 7 aunts and all his cousins and everybody that they did in their community. So just something simple like that. So I think raw material on the inbound and then mentorship.
Ron?
Yeah, I very much agree with that, and that one of the reasons that we have, as I mentioned, the talent acquisition and the chief diversity officer together, and the planning that we use and the segmentation teams that we put together to view whether it's the Hispanic community or whether it's African American or many others, and how do we attract the right talent and begin to grow that talent within, and so it moves up and be a part of the whole strategy, and back to what I was talking about earlier, and making sure we're delivering the right products and services and communicating the right way with the communities we serve.
You know, I just want to add one other thing to your question of what else can corporate America do to promote diversity. And I think it's very important that companies stand up for their values. Because these days, people, young people, older people, they want to deal with companies that are authentic, and they want to deal with companies that, for lack of a better term, have a soul. And so when I'll give you an example. When we saw the travel ban that the administration put in place, we looked at that, and you know, many companies decided not to say anything. And we had a very short discussion as a management team, and it was a very short discussion, and we said, you know what? We have to stand up for our values. And we publicly came out and we said that we agree with a lot of the policies of the administration. We don't agree with this one. And I think you have to stand up and be counted. At times, you can't stand up and be counted for everything, because in this environment, this political environment, you'll get into the washing machine. You know, you'll end up with 3 pundits on TV giving their opinions of what you said. But you do have to stand up for your values at times to prove that you walk the talk.
Did all of you always know that you wanted to be CEOs? Was that a career path that was very clear in your minds at a very young age? Keith and Ralph, I know you started with engineering degrees. You have a business background, right, Mark? But did you always know you wanted to be at the driver's seat, literally?
No. I started out in engineering, but then moved to business school and got my first degree in, or my only degree in accounting. And
Is it true that your frat friends, your fraternity brothers, kind of persuaded you to switch from engineering to business?
they were helpful.
After how many beers?
Yeah. I don't know that I counted them, but I thought, as kind of we were talking earlier, that engineering was the right thing. I was the first to go to college in my family, then an only child, and but I didn't. It just didn't hit when I was there, and so I quickly made that decision to change to business school, and that was because of talking to fraternity brothers. I didn't know what a fraternity was either until I was asked to be in it. And that was one of the good moves that I made looking back, because I had a lot of people who had a lot more experience than I did, and they were very good at mentoring. And then I was fortunate enough to have an accounting professor that also liked to talk with the students, and kind of went to him each year and talked to him about what was going on and where you might go to get a job and so forth. And he advised me to go to public accounting, and he said you can see all kinds of businesses and make your choice after that. I skipped through that real quick, or about 7 or 8 years, and did a lot of banks and went to work for a bank. And that's where my career started.
And the rest is history.
Yes.
Keith, did you always know?
I never really wanted to be an engineer per se. I didn't envision myself in a lab coat and doing experiments. Leadership has always been something that's I found really exciting and a lot of fun, and the ability to interact and make a difference in people's lives and help them out. That sort of thing has always been top of mind for me. I never really dreamed of being a CEO. I did dream, I will confess, of running Cadillac, though. I thought that'd be pretty cool.
Mark, walk us through your journey. You're very young. I don't see any gray hairs.
Oh man, that's not nice.
Not that I don't like gray hair. It's beautiful.
I thought I liked you.
I totally take it back. Mark, walk us through your journey. Did you always know you wanted to be a CEO?
No, when I joined Ford, actually my goal was to have at least stay in the job for at least a year. But no, I never came into the corporation and said, gee, I have an eye on that corner office, but not by any stretch. I just wanted to be challenged, and I think the key in my journey was just to be open and flexible. And what I tell young people, young people always have a plan, right? They come in and they have a plan. I want to do this, I want to do that, and eventually I want to do this. And it never works that way, I tell them. And I just tell my own journey. I never thought I would ever travel to some of the places that I actually ended up living in around the world. And I never thought that I'd, have a chance to work with great teams with Ford around the world and end up in this position serving the company and serving our customers. And just be open and flexible. And when you do that, and you work well with others, and you kind of run to the fire, right? Run to those toughest problems, good things will happen personally and professionally.
Mark, I'm curious, when you think about Ford, the day that you got promoted, and you think about a company that has over a century of history, does that weigh on your shoulders? Was there any point where you said, wow, I really just can't mess this up?
Oh, I say that every day. Well, it's an incredible, I'll just tell you a little story. We had a technology company that came over, it was about a year and a half ago. And we had them spend some time at the Henry Ford Museum and the archives, and we're walking back to the conference room, and this is a tech company that's held up in very high regard, one of the top places to work, all that kind of stuff. And as we were walking back, the CEO said to me, he pulled me aside, he goes, we don't have any of this. And I said, what? He goes, this history. And it stopped me in my tracks, because sometimes we take that for granted. But I feel very honored to serve in this role. And is there pressure? Of course. I don't want to be the CEO that screws this up, or we don't want to be this management team that that takes the company off in a wrong direction. We're building on 114, we're standing on the shoulders of many, many generations. And it's interesting, when we talk to our people here, but around the world, many of them are multi-generational. You know, my grandfather worked at Ford, my dad or my mom worked at Ford, et cetera. So it's incredibly inspiring, but also at the same time, you want to make sure that many people around the world, I always remind myself, I have 4 things on the back of my ID card, and I read these things every single day, and they're the following, and I taped them on the back of my card. Be humble, be grateful, be positive, many depend on you. And I never forget that when I travel to our dealers or our employees around the world, that what we do in the conference rooms and world headquarters, it affects many, many lives.
Wow. Do you kid have something that just brings you back to earth from the top of the CEO office every day?
Probably, I would say, the family, in particular the kids. And you know, I got a great piece of advice from my dad when I got this job. We got it about the same time, and he sent me a nice note. And he has a way of giving me advice right between the eyes, but it carries more gravitas the older I get. So, and you get the note. I know what it's going to be. Congratulations on the job. Well, he talks about how proud he is of me, and mentions, you know, example I set, and what kind of dad I am, and stuff like that. Nothing about the job. The last sentence, he says, now that you got the big job, don't get a big head. Love, Dad. And that was it. So with the kids, they know nothing of that. So you are just a small little speck in their life, you know. I mean, there's nothing that they won't tell you. There's
and you
nothing.
have a 15-year-old, so what a way to face reality and when you go home, right?
A 15-year-old boy and a 20-year-old daughter, and I think many times I'd rather take the 15-year-old. But yeah, they keep you grounded. There's nothing more important from my perspective, and they don't pull any punches, just like their grandpa.
Rob, who or what keeps you grounded?
I think the thing that keeps me most grounded is I listen. And it's very important to listen to the folks you work with every day and understand what they see and what they think. Because then you put it all together and make the decision of which way you're going to go and how you're going to move forward, versus you making the decision every day, which I think is a mistake longer term, because you need the team. And you need to make sure that you encourage the team to speak up. And I think that's been very important learning for me. One of the things, as I was going through various positions before being the CEO, was, and when somebody asked me about that, is be happy with what you're doing and be focused on what you're doing. Don't be always focused on the next step, because that'll shorten what you're doing, and it will keep you from being as successful, in my opinion, as that you will be if you take that view. And I heard it said not long ago, and it was in a book, I think, somewhere, but you know, be proud of who you work with, proud of what you do, and proud of who you are, and not always look for that second step.
So live in the moment, kind of thing.
That's exactly right.
That's a perfect segue into my next question. So what is the best thing about the CEO job first, and the worst thing about it, Rob?
You know, the best thing is having a team, like I was talking about, and having the right people, and the focus and the history, like was being talked about earlier. Our history is a little over 167 years, and it's amazing when you go back and look at the things that have happened, and how many things that the good times and the bad times that the economies went through, and the successes, and the various leaders. that were there, and being a part of that is a real honor.
So I bet you had a lot of sleepless nights around 2006, 2008. Was that one of the worst moments in your career?
It was a difficult time, as it has been, and it's been a long drag on the economy when you look at that. But things change, and when you've got a good team and you're focused, you step up to the challenges, and our team has done that.
What is the worst part of your job?
The worst part? It's when you have to make difficult decisions, and occasionally you do, and those are tough, and especially if it involves people.
Keith?
I think the best part about being a CEO is not that different from the best part about being a supervisor in the shop floor, or running a car factory and other jobs that I've done. The best part is when you get recognition and you get a feeling that you're making a difference. Just the other day, I had a colleague give me some feedback that I'm making a difference on setting a tone of inclusivity. I was on cloud 9 for the last three days because of that. It really made me feel good. And I would just like when I was on cloud 9 when someone said, "Hey, you had a nice shift yesterday. You made a lot of parts." And I don't think a lot of that joy, what Deming calls joy in work, changes as you go up the ladder. It's about making a difference, feeling that you're making a few better calls than bad ones, and just feeling good, about the job you're doing. And that really hasn't changed.
The worst part?
Boy, I like leading and driving change and that sort of thing. And sometimes when you have to talk to people who analyze your stock, that's a little bit tough. I mean, it's like, you got a 2 handle on your name, your age. You're 20-something, and you're grilling me. And that gets a little tough, but that's part of the job. That's part of the job. But yeah, some of the outward-facing, short-term orientation of certain pools of investors is a little frustrating.
Mark?
The best part of my job, I'll get back to what I said earlier, is the people. When we face a challenge or an objective, and we overcome it, and being able to celebrate that makes it all worthwhile. There's nothing that's more joyful than that. I'd say the worst part of my job, I think I agree. When you're making tough decisions and they affect people, that's hard. But I'd say the worst part of the job, which is the motivating part of the job, is always thinking that you're never doing enough.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, do we have the right strategy? Are we moving fast enough? Do we understand the trends coming at us? Could we do a little bit better financially? How is our team? You're always, in my case, as a CEO, you're always wanting to make sure that we're doing more, and that as the CEO, that you're doing enough to lead the organization and push the organization at just the right pace to make the progress that we want to stay ahead of competition.
Is that what keeps you up at night? If
I get that question a lot. I am dead tired by the time I get to bed. I have no problem going to sleep.
See, that's why he looks so good and doesn't have any gray hair. That's not fair. I stay awake a lot.
But we also said that gray hair was sexy. We did. What keeps you up at night, Keith?
That's a kind of copy Mark here, but really I sleep pretty good. You give it your best shot, and it's always going to be there the next day. But in a similar fashion, I suppose there's a bit of an inferiority complex, if you will, or something about that. It's like, man, I'm not pushing my team hard enough. What else could I do? Am I thinking about this through? Am I trying hard enough? So there's a little bit of that kind of keeps you going. But you know, there's a lot of things that you can't control, and most of the things that you can control, you got a pretty good plan around, and you just do your best. So I sleep pretty good.
Ralph, does anything keep you up at night?
I'm sorry?
Is there anything that keeps you up at night?
No.
Yeah, a bunch of good sleepers here.
Hopefully we're keeping
I'm
you up.
asleep in about 15 minutes, and I wake up, and maybe the alarm goes off once a year.
Wow.
And, you know, I will second guess myself a little bit, like you were talking about, but very comfortable with sleep.
So who do you go to for advice besides the board? Is it your wives? I'm curious, what role do they play in your decision-making process? Ralph?
You know, I have conversations with a lot of our people. They may not know why I'm doing it, but it's very important because I know their points of views and want to hear it about different things. My wife has a number of questions for me when I get home almost every night, and especially if there's been anything in the paper or it was an annual meeting or earnings calls or so forth, and those are good discussions. You know, I have a lot of friends in the business world as well. Don't talk directly about things, but gives you a good kind of place to go and talk over times about things.
Keith, who do you talk to?
We have, really it's about the team.
Mm-hmm.
We have an external team, so of course on the investor relations front, on the legal front, on those sorts of skills that don't make sense to have in-house per se. So we have a network of team, but it's really our direct leadership team where we have a lot of back and forth and a lot of differing opinions, and that's really where we iron out and get the most feedback.
Mark, how did you get your wife to move to 4 different countries for a deal that was 2.5 years and ended up being 10? What was the conversation like?
Well, I'm blessed. I have a spouse who was willing to go literally anywhere, and I think the key with my wife, and I recommend this to all the folks that we send to different locations around the world, it has to be a joint decision. If it's just your own decision for your own career and your spouse or partner isn't on board, it is not going to be a good experience. And you won't be productive wherever you are on that. So she's been up for anything, and so she's my partner, my best friend, and you know that was the key. That like Rob said, I mean, you know, I talk to my wife a lot, and keeps me sane, keeps me humble. But we've enjoyed. People always ask me the question, "What's the country you most enjoy?" And I said we enjoyed all of them equally because everyone was different, and it's what you make out of it wherever you go. And I think it's not only about where you live, but also in business, and it's what you make of it wherever you go.
Right. We have some very good questions from the audience through the Asset app. For Mark Fields, what are the 3 components that contribute to Ford's success?
The 3 components: great cars. 3 components, very simply, are people. First and foremost, I'm a little bit biased, I get it. I think we have the best people in the industry on the planet. I think our innovation mindset goes back to our founder, Henry Ford, in this day and age with enabling technologies and things of that nature. How are we innovating and disrupting ourselves before others disrupt us? And more and more in the company that I think is going to differentiate us is getting a true obsession around customers and really understanding them in a much more intimate way than we ever had before. I think is going to be critically important for us going forward.
I'm just dying to know, what do you drive?
Right now, I drive anything I want. That is one of the best places. I drive an Explorer right now.
Is it true that you still own the first car, the first new car that you bought?
I own, when I was 6 years old, my dad gave me a set of Matchbox cars, and that's how I fell in love with cars. I still have them to this day, and I still have the first car I bought new back in 1983, and I joke with my wife, I said, I've had that car longer than I know you, but reminds me that's not probably the most intelligent thing to say.
Kit, what would be the 3 components that contribute to the success at Masco?
Well, I would put the culture and the people and kind of those normative values that we have at the base. So that's it. And then our brands, you know, in this tough environment, without steady brand investment and good awareness and equity, we'll be commoditized and the margins will go south. So brand is incredibly important. Hand in hand with that, feeding the brand, feeding innovation is our innovation pipeline. So our innovation pipeline is really, really solid. And then lastly, for number 3 would be our distribution channels. We have great dealer partners and we have great retail partners, and that, you know, for 50-some years of doing that, that's pretty valuable.
And I don't know if the audience knows, but you really have a lot of brands that are part of your portfolio. Can you give us your top 3?
We do. We have we're in the building products industry, so we're in paint. So Behr Paint, the #1 paint, architectural coating in terms of quality and brand awareness and equity and all that stuff, is ours. Delta Faucet Company is a ubiquitous faucet brand in showers. That's very strong and is the leading brand in that category. We have Craft Made Cabinetry, which is the leading brand in the repair and remodeling category, and then Hansgrohe, which is a European faucet and shower company, which is the #2 global brand in that space. So there's a few.
Ralph, the top 3 components to your success?
It's our people, and I totally agree with that. I think you've heard that now 3 times. It's the team, it's the people, it's the culture, and we've had it for, as I said, a long time, and we're very focused in the markets that we're in. Michigan, and the large markets are Michigan, California, and Texas, and that diversity does well in the banking industry today.
This one, I'll leave it up to you to see who wants to respond to this one. What technology trends or innovation tools are important to integrate within the company's business strategy to attract new and diverse talent? So what would be the tools, technological tools or trends that have helped you or enabled you attract talent? Mark?
All right, I'll take a shot at it because we have our wonderful head of human resources for Ford right in front of me, so I can't screw this up in front of her. First off, Felicia and her team have literally completely revamped how we attract new talent to the company, using obviously social media, LinkedIn. We have a category called high-tech hot jobs, where we actually can go to fairs now and extend offers on the spot. Now, you think about Ford. We've been around for 114 years. We've got a process for everything. There was a process for getting ready for this thing right here. But, so we've used that. We're using, Skype and other technology tools where we can interview people, online. We're using more and more data and analytics to look at, resumes and things of that nature so that we can hone in on candidates that we think are most likely going to succeed at Ford. So I am very proud of Felicia and our whole team at Ford at how we're really embracing this technology, because we have to think about the millennials and how they're consuming and living their lives and understanding that and integrating that into our own ways of attracting people and then changing our environment. We're going on a 10-year redevelopment plan in Dearborn where we're taking 70 buildings. Some of them haven't been touched since Queen Elizabeth was coronated. I'm serious. And we're redoing that into 2 main campuses, open, collaborative, so they can attract great people to collaborate and innovate.
Is that similar to what you're doing, Keith? Using technology to
very much
hire
so,
the talent?
in terms of the casting a broader net and being able to bring top talent in and do it relatively efficiently and smoothly, that sort of thing. So that's a big piece of it. I'm looking forward in particular to using technology to help craft better experiences for our young talent. We have a program that's called an accelerated career experience, where young talent comes in right out of undergrad, and then we give them a job in a business, in a function for a year, and then we pay to move them and put them into another job in a different business, in a different function for a year, and to help use technology to coordinate a network of communication amongst those young folks so that they build that esprit de corps, I think is pretty interesting.
Ralph?
I would say technology is very important, but one of the real strengths in building the lines of where we recruit our people is very important. And the fact that we do some things that the industry doesn't do as much anymore as it used to, like we have our own credit college and we have our own training programs that we are very focused on in developing our talent and moving it forward. And we have a lot of long tenured members of the team, which is very important not only to the current situation, but it also sends the right signal out there to it. When you come in, we expect you to be there for a long time and want you to be a part of the team and a part of the success in the organization. And you see that a lot, and I know you both think the same thing.
The second or third generation of employees. We have a third question, the most challenging but also rewarding part of being a CEO. I'll skip that one. They're telling me to stop. I want to take one more minute to do a closing round. Who or what has influenced you the most in your professional life? And we'll close it up with that. Ralph.
Who or what? I would go back to the listening. And I have learned a lot from the people I've worked with over the years. And that has been a very important strength and one that was, I think, true to the success that I've had.
Keith?
I think the who, excuse me, the who trumps everybody. But so I'll go a different direction here and talk specifically about the what and the different assignments that I've had that have been just a little bit more than I thought I could do. And that cauldron of, pressure cooker, and we're trying to replicate that from a systemic standpoint methodically across our talent development program to do just that. But I would say the experiential, tough jobs, that's done a lot.
Mark?
Who, my father, and the what, I agree. It's the experiences and what you take away and learn from others in every experience I've had and every team I've had to work with.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was good.